This video is designed to show you how to implement the MMPPI, or the Miller-McIntyre Periodontal Prognostic Index, into your practice. The first thing that you need to do, there are 4 additional videos on my web textbook: an introduction to the MMPPI, which is about 2 or 3 minutes long, which you can add to a presentation that you're making to a study club or something to introduce the concept. There's a second video on the background and how the index was derived. The third one is on clinical application. There's one on smoking cessation, and this one I'm adding new now, which is in implementing the MMPPI into your practice. I have been experimenting with how to do this since the inception that I started developing this about 7 or 8 years ago. And there have been several score sheets that I have used over the period of time. And what I have in my hand here is the one that I think recommend to do. This can be found under the web textbook, www.pdmillers, that's an S, web textbook, no comma.com, pdmillerswebtextbook.com, and click on the link that says resources, and you will have copies of the score sheet as well as this introduction to our practice, which I'm going to briefly talk about today. The way this is used, this should be after taking the health questionnaire, or even before that, is to give the patient this statement, and it says, we have implemented in our practice a new concept, the Miller-McIntyre system. It goes into how it was developed. It gives the references all. And so therefore the patient should read that before the dental assistant brings the patient back, or it may be the hygienist bringing it back. And on the reverse side here is the score sheet. And I would recommend at the top of the score sheet that you take information from your letterhead and put on that, because the patient is going to take this sheet when they leave to share with family and friends who may be interested in saving their teeth, or the concept brought forth by the MMPPI. Now, there are 7 factors in the MMPPI that we score: age, diabetes, smoking, molar type, age, I've already said, probing depth, and so forth. So we have 7 factors. But before the dentist or the hygienist actually sees the patient, you can determine a score for age, for smoking, and diabetes. And if the patient is diabetic and they don't have a current A1C score, you can either add a score of a 2, or you can do an A1C score in the office, and that will be on one of the other videos, and you can look up information on that. But before implementing and doing what I'm going to suggest that you do today, I urge you to look at those other 4 videos so that you'll have the complete background on it. So therefore, when the patient comes in the operatory, a score for age, diabetes, and smoking can be determined from the history. So therefore, you have 3 of 7 factors scored before the patient is ever seated. The dentist then comes in and does a complete charting and exam, selects the tooth that he or she would want to score, typically an upper molar, preferably an upper second molar, because that scores the highest, because that's the most susceptible tooth to being lost for a number of reasons. So the dentist turns to the dental assistant and says, would you score number 15? And the dental assistant can then look at the chart. Based on the probing depth, she can give a score. Based on the molar type, she can give a score. And so therefore, she can give a score on mobility, or the dentist can give that score. But in short, if done properly, it should take absolutely no time of the dentist to do this. There are certain dentists that have become so enthralled with the system that they like to sit down knee to knee and go over this with the patient. Because as you'll find out on those other videos, this is so highly motivational and it stimulates patient referrals, which is something that every periodontist especially wants, but certainly general dentist as well. So let me go back a step. What the dentist needs to do is not only tell the tooth that he or she wants scored, but also the mobility. And remember, mobility is very dynamic and it means something to the dentist, and I would really suggest that you look closely at how we score mobility on that. The dentist can then go check the hygienist and do something, and when he comes back, the patient should be completely scored. Now in scoring, if it is a 0, from a practical standpoint, just put a dash because you tend to try to add in a 0. And remember, you're going to score the most involved molar especially that you plan to treat. And then tell the patient, this upper second molar scores a 4, and you have a 95% chance of keeping the tooth for 15 years. That is very, very, very motivational. And many dentists are focusing on diagnosis and treatment planning, but this is the third leg of that stool, giving them an accurate prognosis. Now you can look in the literature, and there are multiple literature articles on prognosis, but all of those take place after the patient is in maintenance. The beauty of the MMPPI is it takes place at the initial exam, and also it is the only one that is quantitative, where you can use it clinically to tell the patient exactly what the prognosis is. It is evidence-based, it is statistically validated, it is very accurate. It received the Clinical Research Award from the American Academy of Periodontology in 2015, and I'd like to emphasize that they only give one Clinical Research Award for the year. And it was published in the Journal of Periodontology in February 2014. So you also need to not only read, but study that particular article. So therefore, the dental assistant can look at the chart and tell what the probing depth is. If it's less than 5, that's a 0. If it's a 5 to a 7, that's a 1. So they can put that score in. They can come in and score the molar type that is said, and that can be automatically done. A 15 scores a 2. Very importantly, when you add the score up, you give them where they are right now. And on the score sheet, in the lower right corner are the keys to success. And I would like to emphasize that the keys to success are simply that. There is no guarantee that this is going to work unless the patient follows the keys to success. And those keys to success are all the responsibility of the patient. And what we want to do is to keep the MMPPI score in the 4 range. And we use a little ditty. It's a little bit silly, but it does impact the patient. If you want to keep your teeth alive, keep your MMPPI below a 5. So once the patient has been scored and given the percent of success, 85, 78, whatever it happens to be, then the dental assistant needs to go and do what we call the periodontal report card. She goes in and says, now if you stop smoking, we can take off a 4. We can do this, we can do that. And show them the success that they can have if they will follow the keys to success. For instance, they may score an 8, and with treatment they'll be down to a 3. But this is very impactful, very motivational, and it is very important that the patient walk out of the office with this in their hand so that they can share it with family and friends. But let's talk about another aspect of it, getting started in your practice. First of all, can you imagine how impactful this is on the morale and the recognition of a dental assistant that can share this information with the patient? Immediately the patient realizes that they're dealing with an auxiliary that is highly intelligent, highly trained, and understands what she's talking about. What does this do for her morale? Absolutely great things. So it is important that this be assistant or hygienist driven as much or more so than the dentist. So therefore, in closing, I would like for you to go back and look at the other 4 videos. And incidentally, another finding that we found in practice, because the patient has so much confidence in the knowledgeable dental assistant, often they will call the dental assistant and ask for information rather than making a phone call and taking the time for the dentist. So the main thing on this is how motivational it is, how impactful it is on getting patient referrals, and be sure and let the patient walk out of the office carrying this and showing it to family and friends who are interested in saving their teeth. Enjoy.